Welcome to our special segment, a part of the Palmetto Dugout Show. This is our first high school preview part. And with me today, I've got Coach Wade Padgett from Powdersville High School. What's going on, Coach?
Doing all right. We appreciate you guys doing this and, giving our guys in our sport a lot of exposure.
Yeah, for sure. We're glad you were able to join us today. No Sammy today. He couldn't be on this one, but we got the two best guys in the state on the show right now. Well, we'll jump into it a little quickly here. We got a couple points to go over. First thing, you had a great year last year. Finished runner up in upper state championship against a really good Chapman team. You want to talk about that? How much has that changed your guys for this year?
It's weird. We were talking kind of before we got on. We got a really big junior class. We'll only have two seniors this year, and they've kind of known that from the past 2 years. And I think that'll be something we need to talk about this year. Is that's not just a given. Especially being in the 2 year periods, we're going to jump into a new region, and it's a group that we've played a lot of those guys too. That are being our new region. We got a lot of respect for them, not just players on their teams, but the coaches. But we got a lot coming back from that group. So, it's kind of an interesting thing where with guys moving into new roles last year, it's kind of how do you follow that up and kind of stay consistent. But it was, I don't think we'll face anything tougher along the road just as far as a schedule goes, not necessarily team, but just
Yeah.
we played, I think we talked some last year. We played 10 games in 15 days.
Yeah, I
And
remember you saying that.
I think six of those were elimination games. And it just, it was crazy. I think we talked before Chapman and after that long night at BHP, like we didn't even practice. It was, I took him to Waffle House because it's like, I mean, at that point it's like a war of attrition. You're just worn out. And, um, so I think probably, just again, from knowing that the past 2 years is it's understanding that it's what you do every day to prepare. Those past 2 years, we had some great leadership, and got there because you work hard every single day. And you can't fast forward just because it's something that you kind of want to finish off as it was an extension last year. We got the upper state championship last year. You can't fast forward to that point because we're going to be playing teams the entire year that everybody's going to be trying to do that as well.
Yeah, you no doubt. You talked about those elimination games. I know you went into BHP and took those two away. And then we had that really long night in Chapman where I was there for both games. I think that first game, what did he go? 9 innings it had?
No, we didn't go extras, but it was just a lot of runs.
That's what
It was
it
just,
was.
and it was just back and forth and like not as many runs you necessarily think about. I mean, it was high scoring, but like a lot of base runners, and it was
Yeah.
just kind of high tension the whole game, and kind of the inverse of how the other game ended up going. It
Yeah,
was,
it did.
it was 2-0 for a while to about the fifth, and um, our guys gave it all they got. We just kind of ran out of gas, and hat tip to them. Um, I know they had their big senior guy that went to Newberry, Ricky, on the mound, and
Yeah.
and he did a great job. And they had a lot of guys step up too. Um, but that's Coach Visar. They've had that a long time coming. He's a great dude, great coach.
Yeah, they have. So take me to this. What are you expecting your team to have strengths in this year?
I think this year, like if you kind of just look at it from where we were sitting at this time this last year, I think we have a little bit more pitching depth, hopefully. Um, as we look at one, just when you play 10 games in 15 days, you got to throw a lot of guys.
Yeah.
And we had some guys step up down the stretch. Um, we had one Braden Williams, he got hurt in one of the games, so he would have been another arm that we could have had. But just along with that, those guys are older too. Um, so I think we feel pretty good about our pitching depth. We should play pretty good defense. Um, and they always talk about building teams up the middle. We'll have our catcher back. We'll have both catchers back. Um, Evan Moon and Landon Fowler, they both caught, every game we had last year. Eli Hudgens plays short for us. When he pitched, which he obviously did a good bit of last year,
Really good
we
job.
played Troyer there, Gavin. So we'll be looking for somebody to play short when Eli's on the mound. And then we got Zach Stover. I know you guys like him a lot. That's been your guy for
Yes,
a while.
yes, for sure.
And he's locking down center field for us, and We're hoping for a big year from him. It's kind of the progression guys go through. It seems like once they kind of settle into what school they're going to be at, it seems like that just kind of clears their mind and they can kind of take off, and hopefully that's where he's at. I definitely know that helped us out with Troyer last year,
Yeah.
with Gavin. Um, and he's definitely a big piece to replace. We talked about, like, it's not a professional sport, but you look at situations, say, like, that's just a professional at bat that they gave you. It looks a step above kind of from everybody else. And he consistently did that for us last year. And it wasn't necessarily like getting a big hit or hitting a home run or a double. Like, one of his best at bats I think we had last year was he walked to get on to somebody else get a big hit behind him. Just not swinging at bad pitches. And, we'll have some different guys in the lineup that I know teams will want to attack because he was definitely that guy last year. So we'll definitely be looking for that piece in the middle. But, we got a lot back. I mean, from our top probably 6 guys in the order, maybe 7, we only lose him. So, but, each year is completely different. It's so weird, especially at the plate. The high school season's so short, it can seem like you're in a little bit of a slump and your numbers don't look great, and you can turn it on for 2 weeks. And, those were the ones that mattered. So, but again, I think at least from the coaching standpoint, when I talk to our staff and we communicate, feeling like we're going to have more pitching depth, like, gives us a little bit more peace of mind. I know that it's a lot less turning the wheels, if that makes sense.
That's the scary part of high school baseball. If you've got some pitching depth, you can definitely make a run deep somewhere. Because you get in the playoffs. Like you said, y'all had those so many elimination games and guys stepped up, but you've got to have that depth there at that position. So talking about some players to watch, I want to start with one who I was so excited to see last year. Impressed me each time, whether he was on the mound, in the field, and that's Hudgens. Is he still playing? He's quarterback, correct?
Yep, they got a big one here in about 3 hours. I know he'll be out there slinging it around, hopefully finding number 21 for him. But he's a competitor, man.
Does it on the baseball field and the football field. That's big time.
Yeah.
What are you expecting another huge year from him as well?
The thing I know, I'll say this, I know he's going to show up, because he's a competitor, and I know he's going to give everything he's got. I tell everybody it's crazy. I think me and you talked too, we had a guy 2 years before in Troyer on the mound, big lefty, and he's throwing 90-91 with a hammer and was really good for us. Set a school record for strikeouts and was a tough beat every time he was out there. But, like, stuff-wise, that's not Eli at all. He's probably 81, 82, but I think in his mind he thinks he's throwing 102.
He's a competitor,
and
for sure.
That helps him out a lot. But, he went 11-0 last year. And that's just hard to duplicate. I mean, you got to have some luck to do that along the way too. So, not necessarily looking at anything statistically, but we know he's a guy that we can count on to be solid in the lineup day in and day out. He did some of his best stuff last year too, when he might have been 0 for 4 playing short, but he's a guy in the dugout cheering everybody on, getting hyped because he wants to win more than anything else. And you like to have that on your side for sure.
Yeah, and that's evident because he's leading a team to a state championship tonight as well. So,
Yep.
Another one as a youngin for you, who I was really impressed with, and that's Landon Fowler. He had, I know I watched him have some big at bats. Had a couple at Blue Ridge when y'all played there.
Yep.
What are you expecting from him this year?
So he's an interesting one. He's a great kid, first of all, and he's actually second string quarterback, which is pretty funny to think about behind Hudgens. But he did a great job for us behind the plate last year. He's obviously a big physical, especially when his sister plays Division I volleyball. When we met at the end of last year, and we saw a little bit of it at the beginning of the year from him, but with the position he was in and then what Moon was doing for us, we didn't get – that's my light going off. I'm going to turn it back on.
Yes.
Sorry about that. They're trying to save some money, putting us on a timer.
Yeah, that's what my school does as well.
But we were talking about Landon. we threw him a little bit early on, especially like preseason tournament when we'd have 4 games, in 6 days or something like that. But as the year went on and, we kind of focused in on a couple guys and didn't have as much depth as we thought, you know, Mooney threw a lot of innings for us. So it was important that Landon wasn't throwing quite as much because he needed to be the guy that could go behind the plate if we needed that, just with the way the high school rules are and not wanting to run guys into the ground. But when we met last year, just, he's got a frame you can dream on. He was one of our biggest players as a freshman. And his arm, obviously, I don't know if you ever got a chance to see him behind the plate, but his arm plays from back there. He's got a good arm. I think some during the summer, I don't follow it quite as much. I talk to our guys, but not looking at it online. But talking with him, I think, he had some nice clocks at velo wise from the mound. That was one thing we talked about is, I think that he's a guy that could intrigue a lot of schools at the next level from what he could potentially do on the mound. So he's a guy, that's a step that we're looking for him to take. Obviously, you need catching depth too, so that's not going to go away. But he's definitely a bat that we're going to be having in the lineup, and hopefully he could jump up, more to the middle, top part of the order. And, he was one that we were really proud of because he early on in the season, the preseason tournaments, it's always cold and it takes a little while for the bats to get going. And he was probably one of our better bats. He was hitting in the upper 370s part of the year, and then kind of got into a slump a little bit when I think, the book gets around on teams and they start asking kind of what's going on. And he definitely, I'm sure, got frustrated because he wasn't playing the way he knew he could and that he did early in the season. And then kind of got hot again late. I know, I think he had a couple big hits against Chapman. He smoked the ball to left field. I know you mentioned Blue Ridge. You came too late. He kind of sparked our early run up there at Blue Ridge. And then elimination against Seneca at our place, he hit a big home run off the light pole. So that's literally light tower power. He has it, but his big thing is to continue to work and get better. We tell our guys a lot, and it's weird for them and hard for them that we got a big sophomore class, but being a really good contributor at the high school level, as a sophomore, is not really common.
No, it's not.
But he's definitely one that we'll be leaning on and opening up that extra facet of the game for him on the mound, where hopefully he can contribute for us there as well.
It'll be exciting to see him again. And I know you've got another catcher back there providing that depth, and that's Evan Moon, who's also on the mound too. So you've got two really good catchers back there.
Mm-hmm.
So because I remember, I believe Moon caught at Chapman, if I'm correct.
Yeah. So Evan's an absolute warrior. Just depth wise, we did some things with him last year that we wouldn't necessarily would have wanted to do.
Yeah.
But just from what he does during the summer, we knew he could do it too. And kind of when you get to that late, not that you're going to ruin any kid's career, but it's also tough to tell them when they got a chance to potentially go to a state championship to be nah, we're going to hold you, but he had lots of games where he'd catch and then, come in and throw. And I think that's something where, I even think not that it's a bad thing. I'm green at this, but I think the high school league has kind of thought about sometimes of what that schedule looks like, just because it puts a lot of stress on players, especially when we were going to school through all that too, and guys are trying to finish and, but it just can't say enough good things about Evan. That's what I tell coaches when they reach out and ask about him all the time is, he's a guy we joke so a lot of times we have to tell him dude, take a day off. It's okay to not do something, because he's always working. He's always grinding, and really proud of him because, he was a guy that a couple years ago, as a freshman was our backup catcher and was handling a lot of older guys on the mound that stuff wise were probably, at least at the beginning of the year, a little too much for him. But he got so much better as the year went. And last year we really challenged him to look, you kind of need to step up that leadership and that vocal part. And he definitely did that behind the plate. And then that's what's really awesome when we get to put him on the mound in that regard too, because he's like a catcher on the mound as far as how he's commanding the defense and, talking to guys and communicating out there.
Yeah, it seems like you got a whole group of competitors, and I think that's what helped you make such a huge run. Those guys, I remember watching them so many times. They never back down, which is huge for a high school team. Um, Another one of my favorites, you've already pointed this out, and that's Stover.
Mm-hmm.
That I love him, love the body, athleticism. Kids, every time I've seen him, he's been good. And he's going to man center field, right?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll be good for you. Top of the lineup guy.
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
got every tool you could want. I
Yep.
mean, like you mentioned, he's big. He's 190, 195 pounds. He runs like a deer. Um, he's got just his power looks effortless. When he's out there hitting, and it's funny. Like you tell guys all the time because everybody likes hitting home runs, but you tell them like, hey, if you know anything about statistics in baseball, like doubles are power numbers, guys. Like that goes into your
Yes.
slugging, right? Like that's one of the things you track with MLB players is who's got the most doubles. And he hit a ton last year. I think he was in the 20s in doubles, and he didn't steal as many bases as he wanted. I'm like, dude, but when you're standing on second
Then
after
on
you
second
at
base,
bat, like every time, like it's
you're
and
going
I
to
know you
score on
can
a
score
single
from
as fast
second.
as you are.
Yeah, oh yeah. So but I mean, he definitely did that. He's a guy that 2 years ago as a sophomore, he hit a couple big home runs for us in the playoffs too. Um, but he does a great job leading. He's a guy that he's got a big cheese grin on his face every time he's out there, and that rubs off on all the guys and on the rest of the team in a really positive way. And he's been through some things with his family that I think has really helped make him grow. He's got a great, like really strong family core, and I know that's what shaped him. And he's a guy that we love having at the top of the order. We like being dynamic. I joke with the kids all the time. I get ADHD over there. I was like, so we're probably not going to stand over there very long. You're not going to be standing on first very long, and if you get thrown out, it's my fault. But we got guys that buy into that, and got some athleticism. And if you're facing a good pitcher, that makes it away. That puts pressure on a lot of high school catchers, and most high school catchers are back there so they can keep the ball off the fence, not because they got a rocket or
Exactly.
anything. So, um, we definitely got some pieces that can play that way, and Zach is at the tops of the charts.
Yeah, and you talk about, I mean, these, especially in high school baseball, when you put pressure on teams, they're either going to fold or, I mean, they're going to step up. But putting pressure is a key thing in high school sports. And when you got athletic guys that do it, makes
Yep.
your job a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy who I was played it when saw you at Chapman, I think he went off both games, and
Yeah.
that's Colin Windorf.
Yep.
I mean, he was absolutely killing the ball both of those games.
Mm-hmm.
What do you expect from him this year?
I'm expecting him, picking up right where he left off. He's a guy that I think it's really like that's one thing that's really cool about from the high school level is getting to see guys grow up,
Yeah,
and he's a guy, he's been a baseball rat his whole life. He's been in our program since he was a seventh grader. And as a sophomore, we did the opener deal. And when we'd have Jeter start the game before Camden and throw his 2 innings, Colin was the guy that played third till we slid Jeter over there. And I think he only had like 15 at bats, and we would have loved to get him more, but that's just kind of how the season goes at times too. And I know he wanted more, but looking back, he played a crucial role on that team as a sophomore, and it was to play a really good defensive third base, and that's natural for most high school guys. And last year, we kind of talked about that as like, hey, you're not like getting DH for anymore. Like you're going to be in the order, you're going to be in the middle, and we expect you to do your thing. And it's funny, he definitely works hard in the weight room and he looks good, but he's not necessarily a guy that's like, if you stand him next to Zach, he doesn't look as big, but his power is just the same.
yeah.
I mean, he, like you said, he went off for us in the playoffs. He was huge because we lost Braden Williams. He broke his finger. He was our 4-0 hitter, and it seemed like as soon as we did that, Colin just stepped right up and gave us an offensive spark that we needed. I mean, I think he hit 6 home runs last year, which tied the school record, and I think 4 of them were in the playoffs.
God.
And that, even early in the season, he had an opposite field one. But he just gets after it too. He's a guy, unselfishly last year, he was starting out at third, and we thought for a better kind of configuration for what we did. If we moved him to second, it would get our best infield group out there. And he did that. And I think that's where we could put him again, this year. But his thing that stands out to me is, he gets his hacks in BP, but he's chomping at the bit to get out there at second base and telling coaches, like, you can't hit me enough fungos out there at second base. And he's one, he's definitely a guy that I think will help some school out the next level. He's definitely talked to a few here. I think some stuff's starting to fall into place for him. We definitely like that, because you don't like guys thinking about that in their last year, kind of knowing what they got going on the next year, and they can leave it all out on the field. But you hit on it, man. We only got 2 seniors, and you hit on both of them. And again, they do a great job. They both, like I said, been in the program since they were in 7th grade. And we'll lean on them a lot this year.
Well, that's 2 really good seniors to have from what I've seen. I remember Wendell hit the home run to walk off against Chester, and that 10-run rule. I remember I think he took it to left. I can't remember where, but it was a bomb.
Yeah.
So he'll be another exciting one to watch. I'm excited to get back out and see y'all. Talking about, do you have some top newcomers coming up this year that you'll lean on a little bit?
So it's especially from the pitching depth wise, a guy that I think at Chapman, you probably got to see a little bit of him. But we had a sophomore who was one of our better JV arms. His name's Blaine Jordan.
Yep.
Last year, he's kind of a lanky kid, tall, lanky kid. And it's really same thing. Like, stuff doesn't necessarily overpower you, but he knows how to pitch. And he's definitely going to grow into his frame, and his stuff will continue to get better, but he's got good feel for 2 pitches. And again, just competes, he really filled a void for us in the playoffs last year. And it was funny, when we played BHP at home, we felt like they were kind of getting to Moon a little bit late, and we went to him because we thought he was kind of our next best option. We didn't have a lot of depth through the year, and it didn't go the way he wanted. We ended up losing and had to play an elimination game that Saturday, that Chester game you mentioned. And we turned right back around in BHP, and he's throwing in that second game and, really gave us length. He threw 4 innings for us in that one, took a line shot off his forearm. I thought it was broken when I go out there, and he's just holding it up. He's like, "I'm good, coach. I can pitch. I'm fine." And it's funny to think about those 15 days. It's almost a season in itself where, we got a guy, he gets up there to get his feet wet, his first taste of varsity in a big spot, and doesn't go the way he wants. And then he turns right back around. We need him an elimination game, and he does exactly what we need him to do. So he's a guy that we'll rely on. He's a sophomore. We have got a couple more sophomores that will be vying for, probably that infield role. But I think a lot of answers will be from what we lost, which is not a lot, but from that junior class. When you saw us, he probably didn't play as much, but we got a outfielder, 24 kid. He'll be a junior, Coates Reed.
I think I remember that name.
He played outfield for us down the stretch as a sophomore, lefty hitter. And I think what's good for a lot of our newcomers this year is, we tell them you really just need to come in and be solid, especially on the defensive end. Anything you give us offensively will be a plus. We got main guys coming back, not main guys, but guys that did it last year that hit at the top of the order that are back again. And if they're not hitting, we're probably in trouble. So, now if I tell them every time that if you want to go hit 750, go do that, because that's not going to hurt my feelings either. But I think that's something that'll help, those young guys, those newcomers. It'll help them get acclimated a little bit easier than some of the stuff we were having to do last year with replacing a lot. But we know they will. And the best thing about that is we'll have a lot of competition. And so the cream will rise to the top in that. And, it's whoever's producing will get a chance to get out there.
That's exactly right. At least you've got some really good seniors who lead them as well.
Yep.
Um, and we talked about this a little bit before we started this show. You got a new region this year.
Yep.
Got some blue bloods in there for sure. What are your expectations for this upcoming season in a new region? Even though you've played some of these guys before.
I mean, it's funny because it feels like we've been in it because we play them all. I mean, we've played. It was interesting going into 2 years ago. I think BHP had the LeCroy kid and a lot of those guys, and they got a lot of pub, and our guys were dying to play them, and we got to play them in the preseason again over spring break, and then last year, we played them 3 times. Four, because I think we played them during spring break too. So we're really familiar with them. That Coach Williams, he doesn't have his name like 7 times on the back of the dugout for no reason.
Exactly.
He knows exactly what he's doing, and they're always going to be solid, even if it's on paper. They're going to be great. But even in years, I'm sure where he doesn't feel like he quote unquote has his best team on paper, they're always going to be good because he knows exactly what he's doing. I played for Coach Thompson at Wren, so I know they're always a tough out. He's a great coach. Palmetto's in there. Me and Coach Frazier did Legion together a couple years ago too. That's probably, I'd say one of my really good buddies in the coaching industry. He's a really good coach. So it says I'm saying it about everybody, but you called them blue bloods too. So
yeah,
we know they'll be a tough out. We're familiar with Southside because they've been in our region before. And then Fountain Inn, I know we were supposed to play them in JV last year when that was what they had. I talked to Coach Rowland a few times and got to meet him at Coach's Clinic and things like that. He's a great guy. And we know they're going to be a tough out because that's a really, really good baseball area.
Yeah.
But I think our guys are excited for that opportunity, just knowing you got to bring it every week, in a region like that, you feel like it's the playoffs every single week, because that is, I mean, you're fighting for 4 spots. There's going to be a couple good teams that don't get in. So, that's one thing we're excited. I'm going to turn this light back on again. But that's we're talking about the region. That's one good thing we're excited about to do this PBR preseason tournament again because we know it's going to put us in good shape to be in the region because we know that every Tuesday and Friday it's going to be big time competing, and you better bring your A game because your B- game is probably not getting it done any given night.
Well, when you play in a region like that, it prepares you for the playoffs a lot easier than you would in a down region. Because you're playing those name teams that have talent all over the field.
Yeah. We noticed that 2 years ago when we ran into West Oak in the Upper State Championship is they were battle tested, and it was just they were comfortable being in a game, being down, being tight. A lot of that's credit to Coach Grooms over there too. He's a great guy, but we're excited for that opportunity. I know in the new region.
Yeah, those games build adversity, which takes me to a few games that's going to build some adversity for your bunch, and that's our PBR preseason tournament, which we're glad to have you. But as you told me, it looks like it's a gauntlet of a schedule there.
Hey, we're excited. When it came out, I mean, I probably had the same look I have right now. I mean, if we're going to go on a trip, I mean, you might as well play the best of the best, and sure. Try to punch above your weight class. It's funny. I don't know when you're going to post this because I haven't told my players who we have yet, but I just keep dropping on them. I'm like, I got the schedule. It's just going to be fun. But, I mean, I think what you mentioned, you were talking about sounding like you have a bunch of guys who are competitors, and we do. And when you are a competitor, you want to play good teams. You want to be in those guys. I tell them all the time, I'm like, it's a lot less stressful, I guess, for like your heart health, in like 15-0 games, but they're not, you don't remember them as much, right?
No,
you can remember single plays down in every inning in close games and just how if it turned that way, it's those are ones nobody likes to lose, but you would still say those are fun games when you're playing that way. So, and that's to your point of what you said, is that's what drives it, is that competition. And so we're excited for the challenge, and we know, again, that's something that's going to prepare us for, the region that we're going to be in, and hopefully the playoffs after that.
Yeah, let's hope you can make another deep run. I enjoyed watching you guys for sure. That was a blast seeing those games. Um, that'll do us unless you got anything else, Coach.
Man, I just, again, want to say I appreciate you guys doing this, and we're looking forward to the season, looking forward to seeing a lot of good coaches, a lot of good players, and appreciate what you guys do covering not just the sport of South Carolina, but all our players, because we know we got a bunch of good players out there, and they deserve it.
Yeah, for sure. We can't wait to see you down at Shipyard Park for that preseason tournament.